Hey everybody, this is Darren Van Dam and you're watching Flick Connection, the show that helps you get more out of movies. And today I'm giving you my Flicks of the Week. That's going to be 2 recommendations from every major streaming service, as well as your best bet for rentals and the theater this week. So starting off this list with Netflix, I recommend We Own the Night. Now I did tell you about this if you're a regular viewer when I mentioned all the best movies coming to Netflix in July, but I recently rewatched it. It had been a while since I'd seen it, and I forgot how good this movie is. It really is just a great crime movie, and it has a few little story elements that are a little bit weak that I think only hold it back from being like a complete masterpiece. I really think this is going to be like more and more of a classic movie. It needs to get rediscovered a little bit, but it stars Joaquin Phoenix, Robert Duvall, Mark Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg and Robert Duvall are cops. Duvall is the father of Wahlberg and Phoenix is not a criminal, but he runs a nightclub, and so he's sort of rubbing elbows with the criminal underworld. It is essentially kind of right between the cops and the bad guys. And then some things happen that cause everything to change in their lives. And to me, it's just really epic cop drama. I really like this one a lot. If you've never seen it and you want to watch like a gritty crime thriller, this is one of the best ones currently on the platform. This Friday, on the 27th, a new Netflix original comes out called Extinction. I have not seen it yet. Just giving you a heads up of what to watch this week, but it looks good. I've been disappointed by every Netflix original, almost every one so far. So I'm going to have really low expectations for this one, but it looks really interesting. Michael Pena, who I think is hilarious, is playing a little bit more of a serious role, which he's done before, and he does really well. But from what I gather, he sort of is anticipating like some sort of event. Like he's sort of like, he knows something bad is about to happen, and people start kind of think he's like crazy a little bit, and then something does happen, and it appears that it's some sort of like alien invasion. So it looks like another sort of sci-fi movie from Netflix, but it looks a little bit more epic than some of the ones we've seen recently, like Tao. So I'm excited to see that one. I'll be checking it out on Friday. And then on Amazon, they currently have the entire Jaws series. That's Jaws 1, 2, 3, and 4, which is called Jaws the Revenge. Now, the first one is one of the greatest movies ever made. It's probably top 20 of all time for a lot of reasons. It's not just a good story. It's not just thrilling. It's not just frightening. It's not just well acted. It's really well directed by Steven Spielberg, and it's got so many just great moments in it. It's so rewatchable. If it's been a long time since you've seen it and you're running out of stuff to watch, you could do way worse than watching Jaws. But the cool thing about the whole series is the second one's okay. The third one gets a little bit silly in that it like revolves around like a SeaWorld type of a marine park and an exhibit. So it gets a little bit more out there. It gets a lot more out there, but it's still fairly watchable. And then the fourth one, the rails come off, and it's just this crazy weird, it's regarded as one of the worst movies ever made, but in the sense that like you can watch it and enjoy it. If you have the right set of expectations with The Revenge, it is a fun, funny movie to watch, and it is not intended to be at all. So I recommend checking it out if you can wrap your head around it that way. It really is enjoyable, which is really the only criteria I have for a movie, is that I enjoy the 90 to 120 minutes I spend with it, and Jaws the Revenge can be very enjoyable with the right mindset. I also recommend Burnt Offerings. I recommended this last week when I talked about the best horror movies currently on Prime. I'll put a link to that video in the description as well. But Burnt Offerings is a really great horror flick from the 70s that a lot of people missed. It's got that classic vibe. It's directed by Dan Curtis, who did a bunch of horror flicks during that era. Stars Karen Black, Oliver Reed, Burgess Meredith, Betty Davis. Huge cast. It's about a family in a house for the summer, and the house is sort of in disrepair, but appears to be like sort of like repairing itself as more and more like increasingly horrible things happen to the family. So that's the setup. What I will say, I'll go ahead and prep you, is a slow burn for the first 2/3 or so, and then the last third, the last like 30 minutes, really like takes off and gets to be really frightening, and just like I was surprised at how like full tilt it went towards the end. So check that out if you're in the mood for an old 70s horror flick that I know a lot of you have missed. On Hulu, Analyze This and Analyze That, two really good comedies with Billy Crystal and Robert De Niro. And this, to me, is Robert De Niro right before he sort of went off the edge and just was making terrible movies. Really, once Meet the Parents sort of hit, he just really started doing more and more junk. But Analyze This and Analyze That are both two really good movies about a mobster who is in therapy. The therapist is Billy Crystal. I love Billy Crystal. It's a shame we don't see him too much anymore. But really, really funny movies. A lot of people saw these, but if you never saw them, they're well worth checking out. Also on Hulu is Sleepers, which also stars Robert De Niro. I did not mean to do that, but it happens sometimes. Really, really good movie about some boys in Hell's Kitchen in the 60s, I believe, that essentially they go to prison. They do something that sends them to prison, to juvenile prison, and there they are abused, and then later a couple of them like turn into criminals and basically get revenge for the abuses that they suffered. And it also features the court case that tries to get them off. Brad Pitt's in it, Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, Kevin Bacon. And the reason I went through the whole story without really telling you exactly what happens is because the movie's super epic. It's essentially got 3 acts, where the first act you're sort of like hanging out with the boys in Hell's Kitchen. Then the event happens, it sends them to prison. Then you've got the block in prison. Then you've got the event where they get their revenge. And then you've got a block that's essentially a courtroom drama. So there's a lot of stuff that happens in this story. If you've never seen it, I feel like I'm representing it pretty well. If it sounds like you'd be into it, you're going to dig this one. Another just classic that I know a lot of people have seen, but it really is one of the better movies on HBO right now, is Good Will Hunting. I really don't see any need to talk about it for too long, but this one is really, I mean, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck both won Academy Awards when they were really young for writing this one. And to me, this movie, like, either one of them or both of them are geniuses, because this movie's so well written. For young men to have written, it's just really brilliant, and it's sort of on another level as far as how smart this movie is. But that said, it's also really, really enjoyable to watch. It's got some funny scenes, it's got some heavily dramatic scenes. It has been a while since I've watched it, but I know it's just one of those movies that I really enjoy from beginning to end every time that I've seen it. Another one that's even more enjoyable from beginning to end every time I've seen it is The Princess Bride. There's a reason this one's such a classic, and it's still like such a cult classic. Think through all the stuff that happens in this movie. It's an insane amount of not just action, but like there's so many scenes, and each and every one of them is entertaining. There's the scene with the screaming eels. There's a scene in the swamp. There's the scene with switching the poison. There's the scene where they're climbing the cliff. There's the whole like last act that takes place in the castle. All the characters are great. There's some great lines in it. It's just absolutely entertaining from beginning to end, no matter how many times you've seen it. It has been a while since I've watched that one as well, but it's one of those ones, like just talking about it now, like I have like a hunger to see it. For rentals this week, Ready Player One is probably going to be the best Blu-ray release of the month. I'm actually shocked at how soon it's coming out after its release. It only came out like 4 months ago. But really, really great movie. One of the better movies to have come out from Steven Spielberg in recent years. But it's a really wild movie about a virtual reality world in the future where people spend a lot of time. So basically video game, like virtual reality video game. And basically this like, not a quest, but like this epic sort of like race and game that takes place within this world that sort of like has repercussions and can change things on the outside world. It's based on a best-selling book. Probably going to end up being one of the better sci-fi movies to come out in 2018. So if you're looking for something to spend a little bit of money on this week for a rental, you could do way worse than Ready Player One. I highly recommend checking it out. And then in the theater this week, Mission Impossible comes out. It's the pick of the week. It's going to be the best movie of the week. That series is so well done. I know some people aren't fans of it, but as far as like an action movie spy flick, these are so cool. The last one for me, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't enjoy it nearly as much on a second viewing. I don't know, it just wasn't as good as Mission Impossible 4, but this one looks really like darker and a little more intense. The cool thing about these movies to me is just knowing that, I'm a sucker for it, but I really love that Tom Cruise is doing his own stunts, and he's getting hurt doing these movies. Here he is jumping across from building to building where he got severely injured. And so just knowing that he's really hanging off a helicopter and it's really Tom Cruise doing this stuff, it makes the movie that much more enjoyable. But in addition to that, they really are just well orchestrated action movies, so I can't wait to see it. But let me know what you will be watching this week in the comments below. But I'll keep making segments like this as long as you keep watching them. But thanks for watching this week's episode, and you will see me next time.